What's up, guys? Chris Brown from Trainboston coming at you with another wellness moment. Today, I want to talk to you about carbohydrates. Uh, Hopefully, if you know a little bit about carbohydrates, you're going to learn something new. And if you don't know anything about carbohydrates, hopefully you learn enough, but not so much that it becomes overwhelming. So to start off, what is a carbohydrate? Well, it's one of the three primary macronutrients that we eat. The three nutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. It has 4 calories per gram, which is the same as protein, and which is probably a little less than most people think. And it's the most readily broken down and utilized for energy, meaning if we need energy quickly for something with a high level of intensity, like weight training or sprinting, we're going to use those. So what type of carbohydrates are there? Well, you've probably heard of them in school as simple and complex carbohydrates or simple and complex sugars. Okay, so monosaccharides are what we call the simple sugars. Simply, there are 1 to 2 types of sugars in them, like galactose, and you've probably heard of fructose. And they're broken down and quickly absorbed, the fastest. Polysaccharides, poly meaning many, are complex sugars. They form a longer chain and they take a little bit more time to break down, but relatively, they both break down very quickly and can be used very quickly. The monosaccharides tend to have a little less micronutrient density, and the polysaccharides sometimes have a little bit more, but they're both used for the same purpose. Where do we get carbs? Well, carbs are also known as sugars or starches. Some are natural and some are processed. Foods like fruits, vegetables, roots, tubers, beans, peas, legumes, lentils, those are all naturally occurring carbohydrates. Bread, rice, pasta, dairy, those are semi-processed carbohydrates. And things like candy, ice cream, pastries, juices, those are all ultra-processed carbohydrates. And they're all somewhere on a spectrum depending on what type of item you're eating at the grocery store. How do we use carbs? Well, we break down carbs into glucose, which is the main form of energy in the body. It's the simplest form of sugar we can utilize. Some gets stored as energy and lives in the muscle. This is called glycogen. Sometimes some of it actually goes to the liver as well, but both of these are stored there so we can use them readily in the muscle, in the organ. Okay, about 75% of the entire body's glucose is stored in muscle for quick energy. At rest, our muscles will actually use fatty acids for energy instead. So if we're not really doing anything intense, we're probably not using carbohydrates or glucose or glycogen at all, or very little anyways. Some will stay in the bloodstream and it goes through the Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. You probably remember that from high school or middle school. And it can be broken down into ATP or adenosine triphosphate. And that is quick energy that only lasts a few seconds. So for instance, a really powerful bench press or something that doesn't last very long but requires a ton of energy. The excess gets stored in our body as adipose tissue or body fat in some cases, if we aren't using it for any purpose. But can we live without carbohydrates? Are they essential? Well, yes and no. They're conditionally essential, is what a lot of people will say. Proteins get broken down and go through a urea cycle, which can be converted to energy through the Krebs cycle. Fats will also get broken down and go through the same cycle if need be. They both can be turned into sugar, essentially. They can get used or stored in the same way. They just have to go through more steps. We actually can't do that with fats or carbs and turn them into protein. So the body doesn't like to use protein for energy, which we talked about last time. But why do we want carbohydrates if we don't really need them? Well, athletes, for instance, without adequate glycogen stores, they'll just tire out faster. Having enough energy will prevent us from using protein as an energy source, which athletes will really need for strength gains and performance, specifically for muscles. Right? Glycogen availability has also been shown to mediate muscle breakdown, which of course is a bad thing for an athlete. Lemon and Mullen found that a nitrogen loss more than doubled, following a bout of exercise in a glycogen depleted versus glycogen loaded state. Meaning if they intentionally had their athletes not have enough carbohydrates, that it was twice as bad, if not more. So they were slow and sluggish, and their performance suffered a lot. Carbohydrates also increase insulin post-workout, which can aid in protein synthesis. But not only that, but it's also anti-catabolic, meaning it stops breakdown from happening, but it also helps protein synthesis or protein creation from happening as well, both of which are good for athletes and people who are doing anything rigorous in general. Additionally, without carbs, your brain functions will suffer, as most people have experienced this, the feeling of hangriness. Your brain actually needs approximately 120 grams of our glucose daily. That's on the average person. That's 420 calories, which is about 25% of our daily intake. This can lead to mood changes. It can lead to short-term memory issues, slower reaction time, and a slower recovery from fatigue, which can affect everybody, not just athletes. When we're sick or healing, we need 15 to 20 calories more per pound body weight, and the carbs are the easiest way to get that. And women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, they also need more calories, probably about 200 more calories, so don't go too crazy, but don't shy away from a little extra. And then that kind of leads to the question everyone asks me, am I going to get fat from carbohydrates? Well, you could. It depends. In the short term, carbs, especially ones high in sodium, they can lead to water retention. And that can give you that puffy, jiggly feel in your skin. You can hold on to more weight, but you're not necessarily fatter. So don't let your feelings, your emotions lead you to come up to a conclusion. You got to actually measure your body fat through a scientific method, not just through your emotions. Your emotions tend to lead you in the wrong direction. In the medium to long term, if you're not using your carbs for energy, you can store them as fat or adipose tissue. Additionally, if you have enough highly processed carbohydrates, meaning foods that have been tampered with like white bread or ice cream, etc., especially the ones without carbohydrate or fiber, you'll chronically spike your insulin, which is a hormone that helps regulate your blood sugar and metabolize carbohydrates and fat. It's our primary anabolic or growing hormone. Of course, you want to use that for your muscle, but it works in many other ways in our body too. This can lead for your body to develop a resistance or insulin resistance, and potentially it can lead to diabetes, which most of you have heard about. Even if you don't get diabetes or go that far, in the very least, your body will store more fat or adipose tissue, which tends to be what people don't want. And it will make it harder to do this later. So even if you got fat and then you try to come back from being overweight, it becomes more difficult because you went that far and you made your body work to get back to a regulated state. You just become a less efficient person, less efficient machine, really. So you don't really want to spike your insulin chronically. You don't want to be having a lot of highly processed carbohydrates on the regular. But some processed carbs won't do this. And if you don't have too much, it should be fine. And semi-processed and natural carbs just generally don't lead to this. For instance, one small orange has 50 calories and 2.5 grams of fiber per serving. A glass of orange juice has 250 calories and only 1 gram of fiber. Who's going to sit down and eat 5 oranges in one sitting? Maybe somebody, but not on average. So if you're eating whole, non-processed, natural foods, doesn't matter if they're carbs or fats or proteins, you're not going to be overdoing it like that. It's not going to spike your insulin, okay? So just try to stay away from the processed carbs if you're worried about being fat, okay? What does this mean for the average person? Well, don't let perfect get in the way of being good. You don't have to completely avoid all carbohydrates, and you certainly don't have to avoid all processed carbohydrates all the time. Everything's on a spectrum of beneficial to your goal and unhealthy or just negative towards your goal. Your goal will dictate how many carbs you should have and how much can be processed. But you don't need to measure it all the time. If you work out more, you can have more, especially right after your workouts. If you eat plenty of protein and vegetables, you're probably going to eat less carbs anyways. You're going to feel more fuller. And your body does a pretty good job of self-regulating when you're not having highly salient, highly palatable, hyper-processed foods. Eat your proteins and veggies first and have them with most meals, and you're going to be pretty good. You also have to consider this, what I call the once you pop, you just can't stop phenomenon with the Pringles. If you can't control yourself at a certain venue, say McDonald's or Arby's or something, don't go there. Just don't even go. If you can't stop yourself from eating a food, if it's in your house, absolutely get rid of it from your house. Do not be near it, full stop. Just get rid of it. It's not something you can control easily. And when you come home from work and you're tired, you're just going to eat it eventually. It's just something you don't need. And if you're seeing progress and you're not doing a ton, but you're seeing progress with what you are doing, don't push yourself further. Less can be more. Find something that works, find something that hits you and directs you towards your goal, and go with it. Carbohydrates are not evil. They are useful. They're not necessarily going to make you fat, but they're a tool and they're part of your life. They're allowed to be in your social life. You just got to think about things and try to do the best daily behaviors that are going to lead you to where you want to be. All right, guys. Well, I hope this helped. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can put them in the comments or just message me directly. All right. Have a great one. And until next time, be well. Thank you.